Hey guys, this interview is really special. You're about to hear the story of a man's quest to connect with his son through time and space, a son who was in a coma for 22 days. This very unique human being had been in a near-death experience himself when he was a younger person, and he knew that there was this space in between death and dying of the physical body and moving on. So he connects to his son, who he knew was in that space, and asked him to give him instructions as to what to do. You're not going to believe this story. It's incredible. Hey guys, studies are showing that 68% of people that watch podcasts regularly don't click the subscribe button. Do me a huge favor. If you like this content, click subscribe so other people know where to go for the cool stuff. Thank you. Hey everybody, welcome to Next Level Healing. We have an amazing story to share with you today. I'm your host, Dr. Tara Perry. Remember, if you like this show and find value from the content, please click subscribe and shoot us a comment. I am here with Philip Stone. I met Philip at a Dr. Joe Dispenza event, and when I heard his story, I really wanted to share it with you guys because it's so inspiring, so unusual, and I can't wait for you guys to hear it. So, Philip, what occurred in you guys' life that began this amazing adventure?
Well, the event that happened was, Logan went into the hospital September 18th of 2020. 2021. And he had experienced what they call an anoxic shock, which is a lack of oxygen to his brain. And I'm living in Nashville, Tennessee now. My ex-wife is in Los Angeles, and Logan was in San Diego, and I got a call that he had been admitted to the hospital in grave condition, and that began the journey that we're going to talk about today.
And boy, when I heard if this was a Hollywood movie, you'd reject the script because you'd think, nah, that can't happen. And we're so glad it did, because it truly is a miracle, and we're so grateful. So can you just kind of walk us through the story? I mean, first of all, I can't imagine being a father getting that information. What was it like to really understand the gravity of his situation?
It was frightening. That's the worst news you could get about your child other than being gone completely, but that they're in a hospital in ICU in a coma. And I had to fly to San Diego and find out what was going on. So when I got to the hospital, this was during COVID, so they weren't allowing a lot of people into the hospital because Logan was in an ICU.
Very difficult time to be hospitalized.
Yeah. And so it was, either myself or his mom could be in the room at one time, and they would only allow us a couple hours at a time, which made it even more difficult. And, Logan, he was in critical shape. He was on a respirator and intubated and not responsive at all.
And what happened next?
It was kind of an interesting, the way it all developed, because of my own life experiences and my work with Dr. Joe Dispenza and Mind Valley and other, non-traditional medical people. I went in and I met with the neurologist who was attending him at that time, and they wanted to do an MRI and see what was going on with him, and but it's just heartbreaking to see your child in that condition in the hospital.
Yeah.
And the medical establishment is not really well equipped to deal with sick people, to be honest with you, in my opinion. But
Emotionally or physically.
yeah. And so, it was really odd that we're being locked out and we can't be with them. Um, but it was interesting in the way all of his friends came and how much support and outpouring of love towards him. Yeah.
Oh, I know this means a lot to you.
Yeah.
So, Logan, you had a tremendous tribe of people that apparently made you rather well known at the hospital.
Yeah.
Yeah. All of his friends were, or a lot of his friends were there every day. There was probably 10 or 12 young people. They're all in their 20s. They came from LA or San Diego or wherever they happened to be. And they kind of took over the outside seating area. I think part of what made him famous was that's where the nurses usually took their breaks. And so there was a lot of the seating got taken up by this group of young people. And so,
Logan, how does it feel to know so many people care about you?
Pretty awesome. Yeah.
So what happened next? I mean, this is amazing that this many people showed up day after day after day when you couldn't even go into the room.
Right. Yeah. None of them.
Nobody to talk to because Logan was not responsive.
Yeah. It was kind of after because of my experience with the near-death experience and working with, like I said, Dr. Joe, and I had a conversation with a neurologist and kind of let him know, I'm not the dad that's going to like assume every single movement means something, that I'm going to be very objective and because I want what's best. I want the best outcome for Logan. And so we got the first MRI and it was terrible. The pretty much the entire all of his white matter, which is how your brain communicates. The gray matter is the core where all your memories and information are stored, and then the white matter is your neural network that all the information moves around in your brain, your memories, your body movement, all of that. And it was all white, which means it's all dead. And the neurologist said this, this is that he explained that to me. I didn't know what that meant until he explained what that was going on. And but he was willing to give it 2 more MRIs over a course of a couple of weeks to see if there was any improvement or change. And in between each, it was about 5 days or so in between each of the MRIs, either myself or Michelle would be with Logan trying to get him to respond in some meaningful way. And for the first couple of weeks, there was little, if anything, going on. It felt like at times there was some, what they call purposeful movement. Like he was restrained. So he didn't have a spastic movement where he would tear out an IV or pull out something. But there was a few times it seemed to me like he was trying to move in a purposeful way, but it wasn't enough for anybody in the hospital to respond. And I think they thought just, no, this is the typical parent wanting his child.
And I recall that you told me something about when you realized that, or somewhere in the conversation, it came up that he was heavily sedated.
Yes, it was, I was trying to get Logan to do something meaningful, where I could go where it was a response to a request, where I could ask him to do something for me, but knowing how injured he was, it's like, you don't ask somebody who's been in a massive car crash to like curl a 25-pound dumbbell to show you that they're okay.
Or somebody who's asleep to go to the kitchen and get you a cup of coffee.
Yeah. So someone with a traumatic brain injury, everything is a huge thing. Everything's a huge challenge. So I was just trying to get him to move his eyes. He opened his eyes um, several days after we were there, probably 3 or 4 days, but they were fixed. They weren't, they weren't tracking anything. He wasn't watching anybody in the room like a nurse or anyone coming and going. He didn't move to a voice. He wasn't responding in any of those ways. And
how many days total was he in the hospital?
he was in the ICU. I don't want to jump to the end of the story, but he was in the ICU for 22 days.
That's an ungodly amount of time.
Yeah, they figure if something hasn't happened in the first like 3 days, there's little chance of anything ever happening.
Yeah, I actually was in a coma for 5 days, and that's a whole other story. But to come out of that is really close to an amazing miracle, and your son's situation is beyond a miracle.
Yeah, there was just little, if any, response or any kind of indication that he was doing better. And after the second MRI, which I looked at with the neurologist, and he was like, "Well, there's nothing here," but I was like, I'm not seeing nothing, but I'm not seeing much, but I'm not seeing nothing,
And describe, you said you have some kind of background with recognizing patterns.
Yeah, I'm almost a little OCD, that things need to be in a very specific order or organization. That just something inside of me responds, and I have a pattern recognition where I can tell if something's not the same, if even a very minor, slight variation. And to me, I noticed a couple of little changes in the spinal cord and a couple other changes in the overall mass of the image of his brain, and which gave me a little bit of hope, that maybe however minor that is, that change is good, some variation.
And you had the experience of a near-death experience yourself.
Right.
Do you want to touch on that and just give us an insight as to how you used that to inform your communication with your son?
Yeah, I've been sober like almost 42 years now, and so I have a lot of experience with people that have had, bad diagnosis that have recovered. And for me, I was 19 years old when I had a near-death experience, an out-of-body experience where I could see myself, my own body, basically below me, and I hadn't really thought about it that much in my younger years, but in my 50s, I started kind of recognizing that was a really big thing. It wasn't just a little thing, it was a really big thing. And I recalled that my being, I was totally fine. I was observing my body, which was lifeless and motionless, but in me, there was no fear, there was no anger, there was no upset, I just felt okay. Like everything was fine. And it was just and I was just observing what was going on, that my consciousness was separate from my body, that it existed beyond my body, And so while Logan was in bed, I would talk to him as if he was still in the room and could hear me, but not necessarily in his body in the room. His presence, I could feel his consciousness.
And Logan, you when you woke up, do you have any recollection of that experience? I mean, some people do, some people don't.
I didn't have any recollection of him talking to me. I just had crazy dreams the entire time I was out.
Really?
Yeah.
Interesting. Any particular mood or characteristic about the dreams?
I was pretty happy the entire time.
Really?
I wasn't really worried at any point. Yeah.
You were just having crazy kind of good dreams, huh?
Yeah. They were pretty
Amazing.
much I was just kind of like exploring in my dream world, kind of.
Really?
Yeah, I think I was seeing stuff in the hospital that would trigger those dreams a little bit, but I didn't realize that I was seeing things. Like one of them, I had like it was in October that I was there, so I remember having like a dream of me being in like a haunted house kind of thing, but I just remember that from just the dream. Yeah.
So it's unusual for a lot of us to remember our dreams. You know, we wake up and we sort of remember them on waking, but we don't remember them much past that unless we write them down.
Yeah.
But you had 22 days of dreaming.
Yeah.
How many dreams do you remember?
I mean, I wrote down a good bunch of them.
And did you write them down fairly soon after the experience, or did you take a week or 2 or 3 or longer?
Pretty recently after the injury, but I think once I moved home is when I started to really write them down. So that's several weeks after I was out of the hospital. Yeah, but it was just after I was out of the hospital. I started to remember more of them as I was just going to sleep or just thinking about dreaming more.
Interesting, because a common characteristic of NDEs is that when people are outside their body, they do have quite a vivid recollection and often something that stays with them over time, something that informed them or inspired them. Or do you, when you came back, do you feel like that experience that you had in that dream state, did it shift your awareness about anything?
I'm not sure.
Okay, interesting. That's a really cool question. So, MRIs are coming in. What?
Yeah, so the second MRI came in, and then they did a third MRI, and the prognosis. Well, actually, a little backtrack. Logan had met someone who was a neurologist on a vacation in Costa Rica. It was a friend of some the people that Logan had gone to Costa Rica with. And he had requested to look at the MRI as well for like an outside, because two neurologists at Scripps in La Jolla where he was had examined the MRIs, and this other doctor, they were gracious enough to let him look at them, and they all came up with the same prognosis that Logan was gone. You know, he wouldn't be coming back.
Oh God, I can hear your tears rolling up just talking about that. And at what point did you have that conversation, knowing that he was, potentially somewhere within awareness range?
Well, Logan on his license was an organ donor. So very early on, like within a day or two of his mom and me arriving, they wanted us to fill out that paperwork to get that process going. And we filled out the necessary documents, but there was one where we had to, say, okay, he's gone and we're giving up and you can have him. And I just wasn't okay signing that. I just felt like there needed to be some time. And so we put them off. And then it was close to 3 weeks. It was close to 3 weeks. I would say 17, 18 days in, the third MRI came out, and they didn't feel like there was any. They didn't show that one to me, surprisingly enough. But they were basically said he's not coming back. He's going to be in a vegetative state or severely mentally disabled. If he does recover at all, he won't have any meaningful life. And they gave us till a Tuesday. I think it was like the 18th or 19th of October. No, it had to be sooner than that because it was 20 days and he had been in. So maybe around the 8th or they said, well, you have to make a decision next week, and say scheduled a meeting for us on a Tuesday. And this is where, like, some other stuff happened with, because of what we were being told, I just wasn't okay with it. So I went on the internet and to on my social media platform and, you know, and Co-Heal International, which is a Joe Dispenza or group, and asked for prayers and energy and love to be sent to Logan to help him recover. And that was very interesting. And Nancy Canning, who was with Co-Heal International, got back to me and said they had a spot on the Friday evening that they would put Logan in that request. And they did that, and they said there was like 50 meditators, really like expert meditators that were on that Zoom call. And
wow, they brought in a lot of
they brought it was interesting because there was somebody had dropped out, and so the spot became available. It was all very
fortuitous.
Yeah, fortuitous.
It's serendipity.
Yes.
And the universe working on Logan's behalf.
Yeah, they were, and
so just so our listeners understand, Co-Heal International is a free service where if you put in your name and say what it is that you need, people will go into coherence, meaning advanced meditators will drop into this measurable state where when they put their attention on you, it helps your wholeness, your whole body, your whole state, your whole being correct its coherence. Did I say that well?
Yeah, I think.
And this is just an unusually large group that you were lucky enough to drop into, and you also included Logan's friends in on this.
Yeah, what happened was the Nancy arranged it, and all Logan's friends were all very excited about it, and we set it up as computer and outside La Jolla at the hospital and at Scripps in that nurses break area, and everyone participated. All his friends that were there. Was probably.
I want to do a little time out here because what led you to do the Co-Heal experience was asking him. Can you describe when you connected with him and asked him if he?
I had talked to Logan, and just as in conversation, because of my experience with my out of body near death experience, and I was speaking to him like he was in the room, and I told him, I said, I understand where you're at could be really comfortable and peaceful and there is no problems there. You're just fine and everything is good and there's no anxiety. But if you want to come back, we'd love to have you back, and it was up to him.
And you asked him to show you something, though, to give you a sign.
Yeah, so I asked him to, if he's there and he can hear me, I need you to do something so I can tell the doctors this is something. And just asked him if he could move his eyes for me. And I go, can you move your eyes left to right? And he did it. From left to right, and Michelle, his mom, was there, and I was like, "Did you see that?" She goes, "I'm not sure." That was, and so I said, "Can you do it again?" And I felt like he did it again.
Wow.
And so that's a big deal because it's like you're in there and you don't really have the strength to move your mass, but the eye movement and to be at the direction from the left to the right, I felt like he had made an indication.
And somewhere along the way, you instructed the hospital staff, I believe, if I heard this correctly, that because he was heavily sedated, which was convenient for them,
right?
You're like, well, I wouldn't wake up either if I was.
Yeah, he was on Dilaudid, which is kind of a synthetic heroin. So it's like nobody's moving, nobody's responding if you're on
And you're strapped down and you got a tube in your throat.
And so I asked them if they could give him something that wasn't affecting him from the neck up, that could allow his consciousness and his brain to be active and functioning. They do it because it makes them, they're not going to pull anything out. They're much more pliable and easy to manipulate. And
were they willing to consent to that?
And yeah, the nurse, I have to say the nursing staff was really on board. I think they several of them were mothers, so they had their own connection, and I think they were really rooting for him. They really wanted something to happen for him. So they did that. They withdrew that dilaudid, and I think that started to make it where he could come back, that his consciousness could activate his brain, that there was some physical thing. I wish they had kept him around for one more MRI after he came to see what the change was, but they didn't do that, which is kind of surprising to me, but not surprising.
So you have 50 people on this call. How long did the call last?
The call was just about an hour. And then we did a second one. At that point, that was a Friday evening. And then the Monday morning, Nancy got him re-listed again. And that's the one where all the kids were on board. We were all at the hospital. Everybody was together. There was a Zoom call. And right after that happened, I think Michelle was in the room with Logan, and we had a laptop set up out where everybody could see him, and the kids were talking to him. They were all on camera and looking in, and Logan's face was on, and they were kind of teasing him and joking with him, and something about golf, and he choked. He had this choking,
almost like he was trying to laugh.
Yeah, and one of the guys goes, "That he's laughing. That was a laugh." So Anthony, I think, was the one who said that he was laughing. That's Logan.
And this was the second quantum healing experience.
This was 2 days after that. The first one was on a Friday, and this one was the Monday before we were supposed to decide what to do with them.
Right.
And this was a Monday morning, and he had the little eye movement over the weekend, and then he had this go on the Monday. So it all corresponded to the co-healing and a lot of prayers from people that we know. And we had the Co-Heal International was actually the person that was the leader of that or meditation was actually in Europe. He wasn't even in the United States. And then we had other friends that were in London that organized prayer groups. And so there was all this energy globally directed towards Logan, which I think really is a curiosity, if not phenomenal. The energetic field has as much to do with our physicality as the medical field.
And there seems to be a lot of evidence mounting up about this.
Yeah.
So you did the second healing session.
We did the second healing on the Monday, and the Tuesday we were supposed to go in that afternoon to decide whether to keep him on life support or withdraw it, because the hospital had basically given up, and they said he is not, we can't do anything. We can't help him. There's nothing we can do, nothing more we can do. And so you need to decide how long you want to keep him alive. And
they didn't say there was any possibility he was coming back.
No, they basically said we're calling this over.
Okay.
That there is no hope for him. And so that was supposed to happen on a Tuesday, and I went into his room on Tuesday morning. And there was a nurse in there, Alicia, and she, "Oh, you must be Phil. You got Logan's dad." And I'm like, "Yeah." So they were all talking about us, and and knew about Logan. And and she was like, well, you know what? I feel like Logan responded to me. And she's like, hey, like it kind of shocked me a little bit, trying to get Logan to respond.
Mm.
And she goes, you mind if I go get the head of critical care to take a look at it? And I'm like, please, do. And so I was there with Logan and we talked a little bit, and he's really not responding much. But the doctor comes in and he goes, hi, I'm, Dr. Smith. I'm in charge of the critical care. And he goes, why is he intubated? And or why is he on a respirator? And I'm like, well, I don't know, because he was over breathing the machine already. When they withdraw it, he breathes. So, and they had talked about if they were going to take it out, they wanted to do a tracheostomy on him before they took it out. So, and he's like, well, do you mind if I just take it out? And if he doesn't breathe, we can always.
Now, he'd been in the hospital for 22 days. Had he been intubated the whole time?
Yeah, and when I went in there, the neurologist, first one, had told me, he said, we really don't like to keep intubated more than 14 days.
It's rough on the throat.
It's really harsh on their, vocal cords and the throat. And so when this doctor came and said, could I take it out? I'm like, yeah, I thought it was supposed to come out like a week ago. And he's like, well, let's see what happens. So they got the respiratory therapist in, and she removed it, and he was breathing fine, and he looked way better because he had all this tape on his face and the tube down the throat.
Tape down the throat.
So he looked a lot better. And so the doctor knew I was supposed to have this meeting, and he goes, well, I know you only got about 15 minutes before the meeting, so I'm going to let you have some time with Logan. And so at that point, I got my phone out and had FaceTime with his mom, and I held the phone up in front of his face, like, hey, look, he got his breathing tube out, and look how great he looks. And I said, hey, Logan, I got your mom on the phone, and I said, hey, can you say hi to your mom? And he goes, hi, Mom. Yeah, and it was like, both Michelle and I were shocked. We were, thrilled and shocked. And it was just, and I asked him, I was like, did you hear that? Am I like
hallucinating?
I'm like, can you say that? Can you do that again? And he goes, and, after 3 weeks of thinking you're going to lose your child.
Logan, what was that like for you?
Honestly, I can't remember much about it, but I know it was awesome when I woke up.
You remember waking up?
No, I don't remember waking up.
Wow, you don't remember that hello, Mom. That's so...
I remember saying something to my mom. I think I cussed at her when I woke up or something like that, but as a joke. But
yeah, I think you did her at one point.
Yeah.
Just to get her going.
Yeah.
And could you see your mother's reaction to your first words after 22 days in the hospital in a coma?
I can't remember it.
You can't remember, yeah.
Yeah, it was, and so obviously everyone was thrilled, and I think the hospital was stunned. I think they were embarrassed, to be honest.
They should be.
And worried, that someone might sue them. So I think they just wanted to get Logan gone at that point. But it was phenomenal, when you have 3 different neurologists from multiple hospitals all saying there's, he's not going to be anything but in a vegetative state, or like severely mentally disabled in a wheelchair, or, and that's, you don't want that life for your child. And so to have that big of a turnaround is, we were just in shock, and Logan was 25 at the time, and he turned 26 in the hospital. And that was the first time they let him out of the hospital because of the COVID protocols and all that. They let us wheel him down to the area where all his friends had been staying. And there was probably, 30 people there to, wish him a happy birthday.
Do you remember that, Logan?
Yeah.
What's your earliest memory
So-
coming out of it? What do you remember?
I think that my birthday, just rolling down the hallway, going down the elevator, and then going outside and seeing all
And
my friends there.
at what point did you comprehend what had happened to you?
Uh, I think I knew pretty much right away. Yeah.
Interesting.
Did you realize how bad it was or how close you were to death?
No, I don't think so.
Describe the looks on your friends' faces. I mean, it's miraculous that they showed up day after day after day after day when everybody was saying, he's gone, there's no hope, he's not coming back, there's nothing there.
Yeah.
His brain is gone.
I mean, there's always the thing when you're a kid is like, what would my friends do if I died? Like, where would they be? And then I got a actual trial run at that. So I know that they love me, and it's awesome just to see that. But would like to not do that to them again anytime soon.
That's so interesting.
Yeah.
That's so interesting. I was also in a coma for 5 days when I was young, and I have no recollection. It's like it didn't happen to me.
Yeah.
And I was just calling friends of mine and saying, hey, do you remember this? Because to me, I thought I was out for a few days, and I came back to school, and she says, no, you were out for like a month.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that was a miracle. That was 5 days. And I looked up the statistics once, and if you're in a coma for 5 days, it's unlikely you're going to come back, and certainly not come back normal. And to come back from a coma from 22 days is unheard of.
Yeah.
Do you know how many people in the United States have ever, or in the world have ever done that?
I have no idea.
I think it's a really, really very rare occurrence, I think most people that do recover after that period of time are severely injured or have trauma that they're going to deal with.
Yeah. In my situation, there was also an odd spiritual thing. A cloud formed in the room, and my mother saw it. Nobody else saw it, but she knew that thing was there to help me.
Right.
And she was confident I was going to wake up okay, even though the doctor said, oh, yeah, without a doubt, she's going to be brain damaged.
Yeah.
So
we had a lot of, a lot of spirituality from all kinds of, Christian friends and Dr. Joe and spiritual, just so much love and energy directed towards Logan's well-being and towards mine and Michelle's as well, too. So, and I think that...
What do you want to say to all those people? It
Yeah.
seems like you're just overwhelming with gratitude right now.
Yeah, it's so, I think we don't realize, I was talking with Judith about it my wife was talking with Judith about it last night, is that we don't realize how powerful we are. But at times I felt like in Logan's room with just him and me, where I don't have the outside world looking, I could be that person. I could be that this is, if you want this, it's yours. You can have this. And just talking to him like I'm talking to you now, just that we're way more powerful and have way more to give, but we've been kind of told you're a dreamer and that's fantasy and that's not real. And culturally, it's to stand up in that way, it's almost embarrassing. You don't want to be arrogant or prideful or bragging that you can do these things. And so there's this real battle that goes on between our perceptions and our realities and our self-image and what we project to the world. And I have to say that because my emotions were so strong, and I think that that's really when we can access.
And how would you describe that emotion? How would you describe that mental state?
It was really interesting because it was
I mean, having experienced a near-death experience yourself, you knew that we were more than this physical body.
Yeah, I would call it I call it a knowing. You know, it's where it's just know.
Yeah.
It's not like you think or believe.
Yeah.
You know that you've had the experience, you've seen what happens, and you know. You can't necessarily give it to someone else. They have to know it.
They have to experience it.
They have to experience it. And I think you with your experience and me with mine, we have a knowing that there's way more than the physical realm, that there's this spiritual, and and I mean, even if you just go into physics,
Yes.
The physics says we're really energy, we're not really matter.
Yes.
We see ourselves as matter, but we're really energy.
And surprisingly, there's so many more of these stories than most people are aware of. And in the past, people were almost afraid to say anything about it.
Right. And that's kind of where I feel like like my experience with Logan in the hospital. You're the first, this is the first time I've really talked about it other than with Judith. And, you don't, it's not something you tell people, it's because it's like this you're almost embarrassed that you have this.
I believe these crazy things, even though science totally supports it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like a weird, don't be that way. It's like, where is that coming from? What you're going to help me with, I hope,
Yeah. And for those listeners who, are really sparked by this and want some additional support, if you listen to the Mark Gober interview on Next Level Healing, he puts a big red bow around all the science that's out on this topic. It's the most comprehensive book I've ever read on it. Did you ever read it?
I've been listening to it online. Yeah, like Judith and I are actually listening to it.
Fantastic.
On Audible.
And anyway, the whole once you kind of acknowledge that this is who we are,
right,
that really colors and changes everything in your life. It changes. Anyway, Mark Gober wrote 5 books on it, so I won't go into all of that right now. And I also want to give a little spoiler alert. I'm interviewing Eben Alexander in 2 weeks.
Awesome. That'll be great.
And I was really struck when I heard Eben's story and your guys' story, because one of the huge common denominators is that the person who was not capable of having a functional brain ever again had a massive support of help from their loved ones. And it does indeed seem that has, his case and your Logan's case are really extremely, extremely, extremely rare.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, thinking about it is that I think that your heart is really what's not your brain. It's your heart, and when your emotion and love and heart are engaged is really where the power comes.
Well, they seem to say that your heart is 5,000 times more electromagnetically powerful than your brain. Yeah. And in the work that I'm doing, and I'm one of many, many countless people who would say this, but if it's your brain that's getting in the way, it's that mental chatter, it's that thing that tells you that. In fact, I have another interview coming up with Chris Niebauer, and he wrote a book called No Self, No Problem. And I hope I'm getting the title right. It'll be so embarrassing if I got that wrong. But it's where neuropsychology is catching up to Buddhism. That's the subtitle. But the whole theme is, we give so much credence to this thinking brain of ours, and that's not where it's at. I mean, it's this beautiful heart emotion, and we all love that. I mean, that's the most delicious thing ever on human experience. Gosh, what a treat to be able to hear your story and how that.
And Logan, good. Tell him a little bit about what you're doing now. Because it has been a journey of, because Logan did get out of the hospital shortly after his birthday.
And so this was how long ago?
What are we talking? 2 years now, right?
Yeah, 2 years ago.
The 28th.
Okay.
Yeah, and so because one of his goals when he got out of the hospital was to walk in to Thanksgiving dinner.
So that wasn't a long
'Cause-
period of time. That was like a month later, right?
Yes, it was it was a month later. Yeah.
And can you describe what was the experience like of because when you've been offline for that long, it takes a while for your neurology to get back online.
Yeah. It's taken a while. It's taken probably the 2 full years to get me completely back to where I was probably like 90%. But yeah, I was walking with a stretcher walker and then with a cane for a bit. And then I think I walked in with the walker on Thanksgiving.
Walker on Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that was and that's kind of basically 2 months after he's been pronounced a non-viable human by the medical profession, he's walking into Thanksgiving dinner.
And what was that Thanksgiving like, Logan?
That Thanksgiving was awesome. It was awesome. I mean, just anything with my family and friends is just a blessing now.
Gosh. Is there more that you would like to add, Logan? Because I realize you were out for the count for a lot of this story, but I mean, what would you like to say, add?
Just a bunch of thanks to the therapist that helped me the entire way, for occupational therapy, physical therapy, the people that didn't give up on me. Yeah, that's it.
Aw, that's so sweet. I can also relate to that because I had another weird thing called Guillain-Barré syndrome at one point, and I was paralyzed from the neck down in the hospital for 5 days. And again, I'm really grateful for the mental state that I went into it, because I manifested probably the only neurologist in Los Angeles County that told me exactly what I wanted to hear. I didn't want to hear anything other. I mean, I can't walk at this point. I can't lift myself off the floor.
Right.
And I, just kind of connected and just prayed and said, help me out here, because I couldn't think of the neurologist, because I knew a bunch of them, and I'm like, nah, I want the guy that's going to be on my side.
Right.
And he was the only guy in Los Angeles that gave me the most positive prognosis ever. He said, oh, well, you might, he says, you might need some plasma. So, he knew I was a doctor. So he said, go check yourself into Cedars and, plasma. I had a 1/3 chance of my heart and breathing stopping. He didn't tell me that. So I fixated on what he said, and I fixated on what one other guy said. And they actually charted in my hospital notes that I was in denial.
No.
But I was back to work in 3.5 weeks.
Yeah.
So I applaud you guys for, thinking outside the box and, connecting to that beautiful soul and power that's yours.
Well, part of it I left out is part of my confidence that something could happen for Logan was I had gone to a Dr. Joe retreat in Santa Fe, and it was a simple meditation, but to focus on something that you wanted to heal, an injury. And I had a bad rotator cuff that I couldn't hardly raise my arm. I couldn't do a chin up, and we did this meditation, and I felt like that had healed, and it's actually completely, it was certain. And I had already seen an orthopedic surgeon who said, "Oh yeah, you got a big hole in there, and it's going to require surgery." And that's several years ago now. And so I felt like there was more to the spiritual aspect of it and the metaphysical aspect of it than. I just felt like I had evidence to say that this can happen.
Yeah. And when it, it's interesting because I was the first acupuncture teacher at the Arthur Ashe Center at UCLA, and we didn't convince them to allow us to, it was wonderful. It was the first time acupuncture was allowed to be used as medical care for any of the UC schools, which is a big deal. And we didn't go in there and convince them with data and studies. We treated the people that made the decisions. Right. And once it happens to you, and once you can have the experience of that, it kind of is a game changer.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I think if you can, the more cases like Logan's and yours, and I know Dr. Joe's doing a lot of research and data, and it just, it's kind of this weird separation of religion and science were probably close at one time, and then they took this very wide separation and this big arc where they're coming back to where the spiritual aspect of science. And I know science is kind of accepting that there's a consciousness that is in everything, that there is one big consciousness that animates everything. And so it's I think quantum physics, I'm just kind of a voracious reader and a student, and so I love all that stuff. And
Me too. Total brain candy.
and it worked out really good for me and Logan.
Yeah.
A big thumbs up.
Yeah.
Gosh, I wanted to chime in on there. One other thing. Was it about Dr. Joe?
The Santa Fe retreat, or
My brain's
Right. Yeah, I have those moments all the time these days.
Yeah. And yes, of course, the Dr. Joe quote. Science is the modern day language of mysticism.
Yes, absolutely. That's a great quote.
Yeah.
That's great.
So it is exciting how, they're coming together, and science is actually proving what so many mystics have said over eons.
Yeah.
So anyway, I'm so grateful that you guys both joined me today. Thank you for sharing your precious, precious story. And Logan, so excited to see you. You're obviously just a exploding with energy young man that people adore. So really, really grateful this all worked out this way for you.
Yeah.
Thank
and
you.
We're gonna get you to a Dr. Joe event.
Yeah.
It's so much fun. You won't regret it. What it felt like to me? It's just like you're if you're a balloon, it blows you up to like 80 times. And then you come back into 3D, and there's kind of that wobble where they call it dispensa influenza, where you're just kind of like, oh, okay, this is okay, I was there and now I'm here. And then each time you go to these things, you kind of expand at a different level, and your life expands at a different level. And oh my goodness, just go on YouTube and type in dispensa and pretty much anything.
Absolutely.
And
I'd love to see the dreams that you wrote down at some point.
Yeah. I'll
We
share.
can talk about it.
Yeah.
Okay, folks, thanks for tuning in. Thank you for joining us for this amazingly special story. If you got value of it, please click subscribe, and we will see you on the next episode of Next Level Healing.
Thank you for having us.
Thank
My
you for
pleasure.
having me.
It was awesome.
Appreciate it.